Imagine this for a moment. A person who introduced himself as an American journalist was actually working behind the scenes for people linked to the Chinese government. Now, this is not an allegation anymore. Thomas Weir Pauken II, a 50-year-old American journalist, has officially pleaded guilty in a U.S. federal court. According to American prosecutors, Pauken secretly carried out activities on behalf of individuals connected to Chinese intelligence interests, but he never registered as a foreign agent as required by U.S. law. And that's where the problem begins. In the United States, if you work politically, strategically, or influence public affairs on behalf of a foreign government, you are legally required to disclose that relationship. Authorities say Pauken failed to do so and instead operated covertly for years. Because of this guilty plea, the case is no longer just about journalism. It has become a national security issue involving allegations of foreign influence, intelligence connections, and possible attempts to shape American policies and perceptions from inside the country. Now, investigators are examining exactly what information was exchanged, who was involved, and how extensive the network may have been. If sentenced to the maximum penalty, Pauken could face up to 10 years in federal prison. And perhaps the biggest question now is this: was this the action of a single individual? Or does it reveal a much larger foreign influence operation that authorities are only beginning to uncover? But who exactly is Thomas Pauken? Pauken spent more than a decade living and working in China, building a career in media and political commentary. During that time, he worked with major Chinese state-run outlets, including CCTV, CGTN, China Radio International, and Xinhua. Many viewers also knew him by his pen name Tom McGregor, under which he regularly wrote articles and appeared in discussions about U.S.-China relations and global politics. For years, he presented himself as a media commentator. But today, investigators say there was much more happening behind the scenes than the public ever knew. So, how did this story begin? According to U.S. court documents, the alleged connection dates back to 2017, when Thomas Pauken reportedly came into contact with 3 individuals identified as Kathy, Richard, and William. American prosecutors claim these individuals were connected to Chinese government influence operations. At first, the relationship appeared routine. But investigators say that by 2019, Pauken was allegedly receiving and carrying out assignments on their behalf. What makes this case even more significant is the timeline. Authorities believe these activities continued for nearly 7 years, stretching all the way into early 2026 before the operation was finally uncovered. And that raises a critical question. How did an alleged foreign influence network operate for so long without attracting public attention? So what exactly was Thomas Pauken accused of doing? According to U.S. prosecutors, he wasn't simply expressing opinions or reporting news. Authorities allege that while living and working in the United States, Pauken acted on behalf of individuals linked to Chinese government interests. Investigators say he helped identify and cultivate potential sources, serving as a bridge between Chinese handlers and American contacts. Prosecutors further claim that information gathered through these activities was passed back to contacts connected to China. Now, it's important to note that working for a foreign government is not automatically illegal in the U.S. The key issue is disclosure. American law requires anyone acting on behalf of a foreign government in a political or influence-related role to register with the U.S. government. Authorities say Pauken never did. And that failure to register is what transformed this from a routine intelligence concern into a federal criminal case. According to court filings, this wasn't a random exchange of information. Prosecutors describe it as a structured intelligence-gathering operation with specific objectives and clear lines of communication. Authorities allege that Pauken was tasked with approaching people who had access to political, policy, and government circles in the United States. Investigators say he helped establish contacts, facilitated communications, and in some cases reportedly provided communication devices to individuals involved in the network. Meanwhile, handlers allegedly gave detailed instructions about the type of information they wanted collected. That information was then reportedly compiled into reports and passed back to contacts linked to Chinese government interests. If prosecutors' claims are accurate, this was not simply about gathering news, it was about collecting valuable information through a carefully organized network operating behind the scenes. And that is why U.S. authorities view the case not as a media story, but as a potential intelligence operation hidden in plain sight. This case is about much more than just one journalist. It comes at a time when relations between the United States and China are already under significant strain. Over the past few years, Washington has increased investigations into alleged foreign influence and intelligence activities linked to China. American officials have repeatedly warned that foreign governments may try to gain access to political, academic, business, and policymaking networks inside the U.S. As a result, every new case involving alleged Chinese influence operations receives intense attention from lawmakers and security agencies. For U.S. authorities, the Thomas Pauken case is not an isolated incident. Instead, it is being viewed as part of a much larger struggle over intelligence gathering, political influence, and strategic competition between two of the world's most powerful countries. And that's why a single guilty plea is now being discussed as a symbol of the growing geopolitical battle between Washington and Beijing. One of the cases already have is former California mayor pleads guilty to acting as agent for China. So what happens now? With his guilty plea officially entered, the legal battle has moved into its final phase. Thomas Pauken is expected to be sentenced in September 2026, where a federal judge will determine his punishment based on the facts of the case, legal guidelines, and recommendations from both sides. Under the law, he faces a maximum sentence of up to 10 years in prison, although the final sentence could be lower depending on the court's decision. For Pauken, the next hearing could determine the rest of his future. But for Washington and Beijing, this case may carry much larger implications. Because beyond the courtroom, it has become another flashpoint in the growing struggle over espionage, influence operations, and national security between the United States and China. And when the sentence is announced, the world will be watching not just to see what happens to one man, but what the case reveals about the wider battle unfolding between two global superpowers.